So there I was, minding my own business. I'd woken up this morning to discover that I was sailing around the world in a small sailing boat. How interesting. The night before I've been force 8 tailwinds, and this morning a 7, and now at lunchtime it was a 5 and the sun had come out. I was naked in my sitting place, eating a tin curry and playing a game on my iPad. Dungeon of the Endless was in favour. And I would say, at that particular moment, not a great deal was happening in life. But things can change. There was a sudden roaring sound of water from the starboard side. The back of the boat was lifted up, and all of a sudden she was rolled upside down with a colossal roaring and thundering of water. There was a loud bang, and then she rolled back up again, and there was another loud bang. One loud bang is bad news, generally speaking, and two loud bangs is almost definitely bad news. So I leapt immediately into action, as you do. My iPad has come out of my grip and was now wedged behind the cooker. I leapt to rescue it, saved my game, and put it somewhere safe. Then I moved into the tier 2 emergency, put my boots and my harness on, because you're going to have two pieces of equipment on. That's going to be your boots and your harness. So poking my head out the hatchway, I could see I had no rig whatsoever anymore. My cockpit was full of water, but that was draining itself, so that was okay. But there didn't seem to be a lot going on outside. I took a quick look around, there was absolutely nothing in sight whatsoever. And I would say perhaps 15 seconds has occurred since the event. But there's nothing much in sight, definitely not. There is no big wave. There's no huge area of broken froth. There are no other incidences within sight whatsoever. Now, always remember, when you're on a small boat, your visual distance is extremely short. Your eye height is very low. So I popped back down, lifted the floorboards, and checked I wasn't sinking or anything inconvenient like that. But it all seemed pretty all right, really, apart from the lack of sailing rig. So, from one moment to the next, for no reason whatsoever, my sailing boat turned into a hulk. Yeah, so there I was. So I restrained the rig that was crashing constantly into the side of the boat to stop me being holed, and gave some longer consideration to what to do. As soon as I found that the boat wasn't sinking, I obviously put the kettle on and made a cigarette to buy some thinking time. It's very easy to leap straight into action when you don't really need to have to. And that's also often quite a good opportunity for people to injure themselves completely pointlessly, making an emergency out of a nothing. Now, I wasn't injured at all because, as always the case, I was inside my safety cage, which I always am. And if I'm not inside my safety cage, I'm in another safety cage. So the pretty low chance of being injured, and you do hear about a lot of people getting injured in sort of similar situations. Things can be done about these issues, at least to minimise the risk. So the factors to consider were I was uninjured, and it's a good idea to stay in an uninjured state if you can maintain it. My sort of physical and mental health had been a bit weak recently, but was improving. So that was about 50-50. And then there's a factor of, it's 3 or 4 months of drifting very slowly across the ocean. What you actually want to do with your life, it's not compulsory, simple as that. And then to arrive in Australia with a very broken boat with no money whatsoever is also a bit of a complication in life. And that certainly needs to weigh in. Now, I did have diesel for 400 miles or so, about a quarter of the way to Australia, but wasn't really going to get me there. Now, I could certainly have sorted out a jury rig, and given enough time, I would have got somewhere, that's for sure. But the question is whether that's your good choice or not your good choice. It's not automatic. There's obviously many factors in the situation to make. So yes, I gave the consideration to all the factors, And overall, I decided that I was done on this mission, as it were, and it wasn't in my interest. I wasn't in any danger. I certainly wasn't going to starve to death, and I certainly would have got somewhere someday or another. But it wasn't the right choice for me. I'd done my bit. Yes, I'd done my bit, and there was soon going to be another really interesting and amazing adventure to endeavor to instead. This one right now. This one right now. So, what had happened? Absolutely no idea in the slightest. There were no big waves in sight, and once you get sort of statistically anomalous waves, not to that extent. There'd been no big waves or waves of consequence in the stronger weather early on in the day, and there certainly weren't now, and there weren't for days and days afterwards. So that seems unlikely. There was certainly no ships in sight, and no objects in sight. But what you have to consider here is when you're on a small boat, your point of eye is very low, so your actual distance you can see is extremely small. But there's just absolutely nothing to see. So it seems quite possible a whale surfacing, maybe, but there was no impact. So I find it hard to believe that there was no impact with anything. The only other thing I could think of would be a tree trunk that would make a wave peak up over me. That's possible, but yes, really don't know. So yes, an unreal mystery, never to be solved. So I cut the bulk of the rigging away, leaving the rig acting as a drogue around the front of the Talent, so she was sitting to weather. So that brought situation under control completely for the time being, whilst leaving me with options. And I looked to the bigger picture. Why she'd gone over, again, hard to know. You should want to hope that your rig would survive a rollover, and in fact she has done several times, so this doesn't normally just break off. So obviously it'd been some time because of my physical health. It'd been difficult for me to make mast rig inspections for some time. It was quite high on my priorities when the sea state allowed. So it only takes one thing. Even if you try to double up your rigging where you can't cover everything. So most likely one of the spreaders would have been carried away. That's most likely, and possibly I had both poles rigged up. It's possible one of those could have broken loose and swung up and taken the spreader out. Some scenario like that seems most likely. But I made like a general factor there, really, that I'd got away quite clean, as it were, and I was kind of happy with what I was achieved, I think. What's always you get constantly in that whole area of the oceans is a whole series of rescued sailors doing around the world, because who doesn't? But generally speaking, people like to do it properly by injuring themselves really badly, or be left floating for months because they have no means of communication, or this or that. Is pretty much compulsory. So I had three different satellite distress systems, and I used my Garmin InReach as my main communication, because it's very effective. It's just a text manager, but it's really very effective, and it's very rapid. So first you get transferred to the sort of global emergency central, and they transferred me to Australian Coast Guard. So within an hour, I had communication with Australia Coast Guard, gave all the information, and very rapidly a pickup had been arranged. A American car carrier, one of these massive car carrying ships, the Patriot, was only about 18 hours away by pure happy chance. I only had to make quite a small change of course to come straight to me. So I had a long, boring night that was quite difficult to sleep because I had a sort of neurotic anxiety thing. Having seen only 3 ships in months and months, because my mast wasn't there with my AIS and anti-collision stuff, I had this neurotic belief that I might would be absolutely typical for that night to be the one night when the ship just drove straight over me for no reason. Yes, it was quite unlikely, basically, I know. So that morning, I was sitting lookout for a large ship to come and get me. The Australians had also sent, I think it was 1,200 miles offshore. The Australians actually sent a jet plane to oversee the operation. I think it was a bit sort of a bit of a waste of money, personally, but it's nice to get some attention. They saw me about the same instant that I saw them. I put up orange smoke, which they said was fantastically easy to see. They said it was really good. So we knew where each other were, and the ship came to me. The airplane was a bit late, so we had to tell the plane where I was so that it could come and tell us where we were. Yes, but they saw some pictures, which is the important part, yes. So I had communication with the ship with my handheld VHF, so that was handy. And even more handy, I had some years' experience of boarding ships, normally putting other people on, working as a pilot boat skipper. So I'm quite familiar to the business of getting up a ship's ladder. This is quite normal, but it's better if your boat can actually move instead of just bob around. So the ship came down on me. She did a circle around me, and then came to a stop abeam. And then using his thrusters and his Beckett rudder, he held position on me. But it was actually very difficult because the swells are coming through underneath, so it's not flat water. And we're getting gusts and winds from around the stern and bow area. So he can fall down on me, but getting the safe leap was more difficult. But it took maybe about 20 minutes of tries before I had the moment and I was on. And of course, the moment that you're on, and that's that basically. I had one small bag on my back, and that was it. With my once again in life, with my whole world on a small bag on my back, yet again. I can't tell you how many times my entire material goods in the world have been on my back or in my pockets in life. It must be sort of 20 or 30 times I've literally been down to my pockets. It's an opportunity. It's always an opportunity. So yes, and there I was on a flipping great big ship, just like that. Goodbye, my boat. Hello, big ship. Let's see what this place does. So there was an American ship with a 100% American crew, and I couldn't have been luckier because I mean they were just so lucky. I was their man, right, and they were here to rescue me no matter what. That was what they were here for, and they were just great. They had 2 chefs, fantastic food as you would expect. And it was an ex-Swedish ship, but really pretty new. And of course, being an American ship, they were dry. But the ship had like 3 bars and all these saloons. There was as many seating areas as there were crewmen on the ship, and an art gallery. And it was really a bit overly nice, frankly. But I wasn't complaining. So I had the owner's cabin, and the bed on in the cabin was about the same size as the entire interior of my boat had been. So it was that was a bit weird kind of thing. Yes, and I think then I had 3 or was it 5 days, or I don't remember, 3 or 5 days. Got us into Fremantle in near Perth in Australia. Yes, and then it was just in time for the aftermath, basically. First customs, that was quite easy. And then there was a queue of media people waiting at the gate. I hadn't. They didn't realise at this point that I hadn't injured myself properly or whatever. So the news people had turned up, but I soon bored them into into destruction. I soon bored the media into retreats. I did the two local TV crews. I haven't been able to find a copy of it. If anybody can find a copy of the Australia local news video, it seems to have disappeared, probably because it's boring, I should say, and not very interesting. There was a little known local fast talk news show on the radio, one of these sort of motor mouth people, and obviously he was got me on the phone, and it's like wanted me to say how terrifying it was and all these kind of things, and he just said, "Oh, so were you afraid?" And I just said, "No, I don't normally fear myself." And he was like, "All right, thanks," and that was it. Yeah, so that got rid of the media, and I just got down to a couple of days of hardcore beer, because I never have on my boats. There's never any alcohol, basically. I don't do it. It's just not clever. Yeah, pubs are for alcohol, and the sea is for the sea. Yes, so I didn't really fancy an adventure in Australia. So I raided the Bank of Mum and flew back to England, ready for new adventures.